The leather couch in the therapist's office felt impossibly cold beneath me. I sat rigidly, my hands folded in my lap, watching my husband Marcus reach across the small wooden table. He didn't reach for me. He reached for his sister-in-law Veronica, squeezing her hand in a gesture so intimate, so deliberately dismissive of me, that I felt something inside me crystallize into absolute clarity. I am Aurora Hayes, 36 years old, a forensic accountant by training and profession, a woman trained to find secrets hidden in financial data. And my husband had just chosen to end our marriage in front of therapists, his brother, and his brother's wife. If you father a child for Veronica, you are choosing to end our marriage, I had said, my voice steady even as my hands trembled with 3 years of accumulated pain, 3 years of fertility treatments, 3 years of depleted savings, 3 years of invasive procedures and devastating negative tests. I already did it, Aurora, Marcus had replied, his tone cold and final. The paperwork is signed. This is family duty. And then he reached for Veronica's hand. The room seemed to tilt. Not from shock. I had already suspected this was coming. But from the absolute finality of it. From the public nature of his betrayal. From the realization that this man I had loved, this man I had supported through his career, had chosen his brother's desires over our marriage. I stood up calmly, gathered my purse, and walked out of that office. And I did not cry. I did something far more dangerous. I started thinking like a forensic accountant. My career had always been about finding what people try to hide. For the past 5 years, I had put my career on hold. I had managed our household. I had supported Marcus's dreams of expanding his family's import-export business. I had paid for fertility treatments, thousands of dollars from my savings, which had dwindled to almost nothing. And I had sacrificed my professional credibility to play the role of the devoted wife. Sterling Trade was owned by Marcus and his brother Philip, a family business that had been operating for 12 years. I had always found the business structure odd. The cash flow seemed inconsistent. The expenses didn't always align with reported revenue. But whenever I asked Marcus about it, he would dismiss me. You're just too anxious, Aurora. You worry too much. These are just family business things. His family had a way of making me feel small. Philip's wife, Veronica, who couldn't hold a job and who relied entirely on her husband's income, would give me pitying looks when I talked about my career. She would make comments about how intense and aggressive I was in my professional thinking. Why do you have to look at everything like there's a crime? She would laugh. Can't you just relax and be happy? I had tried to relax. I had tried to be happy. But my professional instincts had never stopped whispering that something wasn't right. Now, sitting in my car in the parking lot of the therapist's office, I made a decision. If Marcus wanted to end our marriage, I was going to ensure I got every penny I deserved. And I was going to start by understanding exactly where those pennies were. I contacted an attorney that evening. Her name was Ms. Patricia Dubois, and she was precisely the kind of lawyer you want when you're in a financial fight. Sharp, methodical, and absolutely ruthless about protecting her client interests. Mr. Hayes signed a donation agreement. Ms. Dubois said after I explained the situation, her voice clinical and focused. Without a prenuptial agreement, you're entitled to half of all marital assets acquired during your marriage. That includes half of Sterling Trade. I leaned forward. What if there's something else? What if the business structure is more complicated than it appears? Ms. Dubois looked at me with professional interest. Do you suspect fraud? I suspect, I said carefully, that my husband's brother might not want his business subjected to the kind of scrutiny that comes with a divorce division. And I suspect that might be one reason why this donation happened right now. Ms. Dubois nodded slowly. Then we need to understand the business completely. Every account, every transaction, every structure. Are you willing to spend time on that? I'm a forensic accountant, I said. It's literally my job. The divorce process gave me legal authority to request business documents. This was the critical piece that distinguished my situation from illegal hacking or unauthorized access. During divorce proceedings, both parties must disclose all financial assets. Sterling Trade's books were now open to me through legitimate legal channels. And what I found made my blood run cold. The business structures were layered, multiple shell entities. Transactions flowing between accounts in ways that seemed deliberately obfuscated, expenses that didn't correspond to any services rendered, investment accounts that held money but generated no legitimate business purpose. I spent 2 weeks analyzing the documentation. I created spreadsheets. I traced cash flows. I identified patterns. And I found something that made me understand why Marcus had been so desperate to push through the donation before our marriage ended. I hired a second professional, a CPA named Mr. Harrison, who specialized in forensic accounting for divorce cases. I gave him complete access to my analysis and asked him to validate my findings independently. "This is tax evasion," he said quietly, reviewing my work. "Not small-scale tax evasion. Sophisticated, calculated, ongoing tax evasion. They're routing income through shell companies to avoid corporate and personal income taxes. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past several years. Can you prove it?" I asked. "I can more than prove it," Mr. Harrison said. "I can demonstrate the pattern, the intent, and the mechanism. This isn't accidental bookkeeping. This is deliberate tax fraud." He paused and added, "Aurora, this is criminal. You need to report this to the IRS and potentially to law enforcement." I sat with that information for 3 days. I made my decision on a Wednesday morning. I contacted the IRS Criminal Investigation Division directly, not through an attorney, not anonymously, through the official channels established for reporting tax fraud. I provided them with my professional credentials as a forensic accountant, my analysis of Sterling Trade's financial structure, copies of all business documentation I had obtained through legal discovery in my divorce, contact information from Mr. Harrison, who could provide independent validation, a clear statement that I was reporting suspected tax fraud. I was not seeking a reward. I was not seeking special treatment. I was simply reporting a federal crime through proper legal channels, which any citizen can do. The IRS took approximately 2 weeks to begin their investigation. During those 2 weeks, I worked with Ms. Du Bois on my divorce settlement. Marcus was shocked when the IRS showed up at Sterling Trade with a warrant for financial records. I learned about it through the news. Sterling Trade's investigation became public when the business had to disclose a federal inquiry to its creditors and clients. Philip panicked. Marcus panicked. They immediately hired a high-powered criminal defense attorney, and they suddenly became very motivated to settle my divorce quickly and favorably. Ms. Du Bois was director in negotiations. "My client is entitled to 50% of all marital assets. That includes 50% of Sterling Trade's current value. Given the ongoing federal investigation, that value may diminish significantly. Your clients would be wise to settle now at full valuation rather than wait for a post-investigation reassessment." The message was clear. Settle fairly with Aurora or face a massive business collapse when the IRS investigation concluded. Marcus and Philip settled within 3 weeks. The settlement gave me $8 million in liquid assets, my share of Sterling Trade's current valuation, full title to our marital home, valued at $1.2 million, my retirement accounts, fully funded and protected, my legal fees, paid in full by Marcus, a complete cessation of any spousal support obligations. I wanted no further financial entanglement with Marcus. More importantly, the settlement included a clause where Marcus explicitly acknowledged that Sterling Trade's business structure was subject to ongoing regulatory review, which essentially prevented him from contesting the valuation I received. The federal investigation continued for another 8 months. It concluded with substantial fines for tax evasion, back taxes owed, and penalties. Sterling Trade was required to restructure its entire business model under federal supervision. Philip received 2 years of probation. Marcus received 1 year of probation and was required complete tax fraud training. Both men's professional reputations were permanently damaged. Their client abandoned them. The business, which had once been valued at $16 million, was eventually sold at a loss. I used my settlement to rebuild my life. I returned to full-time forensic accounting work, this time as a consultant specializing in fraud detection during divorce proceedings. My first year back in the field, I earned $320,000. By the third year, I was earning over $600,000 annually. I bought a beautiful home in the city. Not the marital home Marcus and I had owned, but a new space I chose entirely for myself. I furnished it with art and furniture that made me happy. I took vacations. I built friendships with women who valued my intelligence and my strength. I did not pursue revenge. I pursued justice through proper legal channels. And in doing so, I discovered something about myself that the years of fertility treatments and marital compromise had hidden. I was powerful. I was competent. I was more than enough on my own. 3 years after my divorce was finalized, I received a request for expert witness testimony in a different case involving sterling trade. A business partner was suing Marcus and Philip, claiming he had been deceived about the company's true financial condition. They wanted me to provide analysis of the fraudulent financial structures. In the courtroom, I testified for 2 days about the mechanisms of the tax evasion. I explained the layered shell companies. I demonstrated how the cash flows had been deliberately obscured. I showed exactly how someone with forensic training could identify the fraud that had been hidden from investors. Marcus sat in the courtroom and watched me dismantle the business he and his brother had built on lies. He didn't make eye contact with me once. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt something release inside me. Not satisfaction exactly, not vindication, just a profound peace of knowing that I had done the right thing through the right means. The jury found in favor of the plaintiff. Sterling Trade had to pay damages. I sat in my office on the 42nd floor of an accounting firm, now a partner in the firm, having built my reputation on my ability to find fraud, and I reflected on the past few years. The woman who had sat in a therapist's office, devastated by her husband's betrayal, seemed like a different person. In some ways, but in other ways, she was the same woman, just finally fully herself. I had not destroyed Marcus through illegal means. I had not hacked his accounts or committed extortion. I had not done anything unethical or criminal. What I had done was far more powerful. I had simply told the truth. I had reported a crime through proper legal channels. I had provided testimony. I had used my professional expertise to expose what had been hidden. And in doing so, I had saved myself far more effectively than any scheme could have. The fertility clinic called me one afternoon, several years into my new life. They wanted me to participate in a study about women who had pursued alternative paths to parenthood after infertility trauma. They wanted to understand how I had moved forward. I declined to participate. I had no interest in revisiting that pain or transforming my trauma into someone else's research data. But the call did make me reflect on something. I had wanted to be a mother. I had grieved the biological child I never had, and that grief had been real and valid. But I had also discovered something else. My identity was not dependent on whether I was someone's mother. My worth was not measured by my fertility. My worth was measured by my competence, my integrity, my intelligence, and my strength. And those things, those had never been diminished by the fact that I couldn't conceive a child. I stood in my office on the 42nd floor, looking out at the city below, and I thought about the woman I had been. She had been desperate. She had been diminished. She had been made to feel small by a family that mocked her intelligence and her professional instincts. But she had also possessed something else, the ability to see what others try to hide. And when she finally used that ability, not for revenge, but for justice, everything changed. The settlement I received gave me financial security. But more than that, it gave me something far more valuable. Proof that my professional competence mattered, that my instincts were correct, that I had been right to trust my own mind. I had not needed to commit crimes to escape a bad marriage. I had only needed to trust myself. And in trusting myself, in using my legitimate professional expertise to expose legitimate federal crimes through proper legal channels, I had won something worth far more than any money. I had won myself back. I thought about Marcus sometimes, though less and less as the years passed. I wondered if he ever thought about that moment in the therapist's office, that moment when he had chosen his brother's desire for a child over our marriage, that moment when he reached for Veronica's hand instead of mine. I wondered if he understood that his biggest mistake wasn't the infidelity or the betrayal. His biggest mistake was underestimating the woman he had married. He had assumed I was just an anxious, emotional woman who worried too much about numbers. He had never understood that my attention to those numbers was not a character flaw. It was my superpower. And when he finally threatened my survival by betraying our marriage, I had used that superpower exactly as it was meant to be used, to protect myself and expose the truth. Years later, I would mentor young women entering the forensic accounting field, and I would tell them the same thing, over and over: trust your instincts, trust your analysis. When something doesn't add up, literally or figuratively, pay attention to that whisper of doubt. That's not anxiety. That's expertise. That's your professional training telling you something is wrong. And when you discover the truth, when you find hidden numbers, the fraudulent structures, the deliberately obscured cash flows, report it. Report it through proper channels. Let the system work. You don't need to break the law to expose lawbreaking. You don't need to become a criminal to escape a situation created by criminals. You simply need to trust yourself enough to report what you found. And when you do, the world will eventually align with your truth. Not always quickly, not always painlessly, but eventually the truth wins, and you win with it. I would pause, then add one more thing. Your value was never dependent on being married. Your worth was never measured by whether you could conceive a child. Your strength was never diminished by the fact that someone chose to betray you. Your value is in your mind. Your worth is in your competence. Your strength is in your integrity. Trust those things, and they will carry you through anything. If you made it this far, you understand. Respect is non-negotiable. My worth wasn't defined by Marcus's betrayal or the family labeling me hysterical. My story proves that silence can be a weapon, and patience, the patience to audit the sterling trade accounts, can be absolute power. If this resonated with you, if a narcissistic family has gaslit you into believing your pain is crazy, tell them this. Your silence doesn't make you weak. Your boundaries don't make you difficult. Your survival makes you extraordinary. Never let their cruelty dim your light. The revolution happens when you decide to write your own ending. They thought they'd trap me with a baby and a divorce. I became a forensic accountant who walked away with $15 million and their legal ruin. Share your story below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.